Kia ora and welcome to this little Pacific Championships video. Just zoning in on the men today. We might do a women's video coming up in the next few days, and I am here to talk through the Aotearoa flavour in all Pacific Championship squads. I do want to try stay neutral and not get caught up in following one team too hearty, one team too closely. We got the Kiwis hat on, you know how that is. We got the Tonga t-shirt on. I might need to get a bowl of Vailima or something just to pledge my allegiance, but that is to say, I am most interested in the Aotearoa flavour for all Pacific Championships teams, and that means players who come through the grassroots rugby league system in Aotearoa, or even rugby union systems like Iliasa Katoa, who left Tonga, came to Auckland and was an absolute beast for Tamaki College first 15, making them, probably given them their best phase of first 15 rugby in a while. So shout out to Iliasa Katoa and Tamaki College, because there's not many rugby union players who leave the Pacific Islands to go to a school like Tamaki College. We all know how the first 15 scene works in Aotearoa. A lot of big donny schools who have a lot of money to spend, a lot of resources to blow, but Tamaki College isn't one of those. And Iliasa Katoa, that's just a cool little wrinkle about his journey, is that he thrived at a school like Tamaki College. Shout out to Tamaki College. And while I'm on the topic of schools, I will just skip ahead because I'm got this on the top of my mind. One of my main things for Samoa is Benaiah Ioelu. Coming into the squad at hooker. He is from Tangaroa College in Aotearoa. He played a few rugby league clubs, Aotearoa, Howick, Mount Albert, just to name a few. And he is obviously high quality dummy half who is signed to the Roosters. He was signed to the Roosters while he was still at Tangaroa College. There's the Blue Wall kind of docu-series on YouTube that you can watch, and there's a whole episode that focuses on Ioelu and him being signed to the Roosters, him travelling to Sydney to be in the Roosters system, but still playing first 15 rugby for Tangaroa College. And I believe, like, Connolly Lemuelu isn't in the squad, so we assume that he's injured, because I think he would be good enough to make the Samoan squad. He also went to Tangaroa College, so I do have a hope that one day we see Ioelu and Lemuelu playing for Samoa together as former Tangaroa College pupils. Lemuelu is both the same with Iliasa Katoa. Lemuelu was I think he was like a first 5 at Tangaroa College, playing first 15 when they were pretty damn good. And then Ioelu was also a key contributor in another good season of Tangaroa College first 15. So same with Iliasa Katoa. These players were key contributors in those, like Tangaroa College, Tamaki College, having their best pockets of first 15 rugby in the Auckland competition. Lemuelu left Tangaroa College to go to Kibra Park, which is a crazy journey because he was like a first 5 at Tangaroa College, then he was a fullback at Kibra Park, then he had a bit of centre activity in like New South Wales Cup, Queensland Cup. Now he's an edge forward. Benaiah Ioelu, I'm not sure exactly. I think I've seen him play on the wing one game. Not sure about his first 15 position, but he's just been a hooker while in the Roosters system. So that's just a cool example of the Kiwi NRL junior journeys for these players from Aotearoa. And Ioelu comes into the Samoa squad all over the show today. He will be a very important player for Samoa moving forward as a reliable, crafty, running dummy half. Just sticking with Samoa, we've got another bit of information is Chanel Harris-Tavita. My assessment is that he is just ride or die with Samoa, because we've seen the Kiwis have some halves depth issues. That saw Sean Johnson play last year in a farewell tour. We got Kieran Foran playing in a farewell tour. Jerome Hughes has missed the last two competitions, Pacific Championship competitions. There is, nifty half depth for the Kiwis, because you could, Cody Nikarima was listed as injured for this campaign, but you could call upon Tamaira Martin, who's played for the Kiwis. He would do a job at the international level. But that is to say that while the Kiwis have been dipping into their halves depth, there's no movement for Chanel Harris-Tavita, who is, I think he's played for the Māori All-Stars, I believe, and he's stayed solid with Samoa. So I am not expecting any change for Chanel Harris-Tavita as far as his international eligibility. He will keep playing for Samoa, considering when there were holes in the Kiwis halves mixer, he stayed solid with Samoa, and I expect him to be another key player for Samoa over the coming years, which leads me into another kind of general point. The Kiwis squad, I'm not 1,000% sure about the heritage of these players, but I think Nofahu White is one of, if not the only player with Tongan blood in the Kiwis squad, which is very different to the Samoan side of things. The Samoan heritage players in the Kiwis squad are Sofa Solomona, Dylan Brown, Aaron Clark, Jermaine Isako, Keanu Kinney, Moses Leota, Ronaldo Mulatalo, Isaiah Papali'i. So we've got, just a quick check there, 7 players of Samoan heritage, and Nofahu White, because he's half Samoan, half Tongan. So 7 or 8 players with Samoan heritage, and only 1 player of Tongan heritage in the Kiwis squad. So yes, there are a lot of players who are choosing to represent Samoa ahead of Australia. I'm not sure if that's the case for New Zealand, because all the high quality Kiwis players who are Samoans, they're still representing the Kiwis. But that is very different to Tonga, because you've only got Nofahu White, who is half Samoan, half Tongan in that Kiwi squad. And then you've got the Tongan squad. We've obviously got Leka Halasima, and there was like a news report. Stacey Jones was saying Leka Halasima was torn about which country to represent, Tonga or New Zealand. He wasn't torn, bruh. Leka Halasima was going to play for Tonga the whole time, and that is based on how other Tongans have acted in the international rugby league scene. Again, there's only one Tongan in the Kiwi squad, so there is plenty of evidence to tell us that Tongans will choose to play for Tonga ahead of New Zealand, and there is less evidence to suggest that Samoans will choose Samoa over New Zealand. But there are some funky cases, as I just listed, with Ioelu, Chanel Harris-Tavita, also in that Samoan squad, Ata Mariota, Manirewa Jr., Dean Mariner, Maris Jr., Jazz Tavanga, Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, Simi Sasangi. Oh, but Roger Tuivasa-Sheck is choosing Samoa over New Zealand. That's at the later stage of his career. During his prime years, basically a decade, Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, while he was playing rugby league, always represented New Zealand. That is very different to Chanel Harris-Tavita, because Chanel Harris-Tavita, in his prime years, he is choosing to play for Samoa. So Tuivasa-Sheck, yes, it's part of this, it fits into the story of players choosing to play for Samoa and Tonga ahead of New Zealand and Australia. It fits into that bucket, but if you dive deeper into it, he is at the later stage of his career, which is a move that we've seen many others make. Like, there's nothing different about what Roger Tuivasa-Sheck is doing compared to many other, like a Manu Vatuvai. Manu Vatuvai played for New Zealand. I think he might have had a game for Tonga early, but he played for New Zealand, then at the later stage of his career returned to Tonga. There's a lot of players who have done that. That was the status quo. So Roger Tuivasa-Sheck's doing that. That's why the Chanel Harris-Tavita situation needs to be celebrated from a Samoan perspective, because he's in his prime choosing to play for Samoa when there would be opportunities for New Zealand. And Tuivasa-Sheck, he's bowing out of his rugby league days representing Samoa, which is cool. And we've also got Simi Sasangi Ellerslie Jr. in that Samoan squad. The Kiwi NRL juniors for Tonga, Leka Halasima from Mangere East. You will see maybe a few places list him as an Otahuhu junior, but he's coming out of Southern Cross Campus and Mangere East. Obviously, he would have played for Otahuhu at some point. I think he also might have had a season or two with Point Chev because they have the Warriors connections, but he is hardcore Mangere East and Mangere, and probably not Mangere Bridge. Saliva Havili's in that squad, Jason Tamalolo, they're both from South Auckland, Tamalolo, Papakura, Otahuhu, Saliva Havili, Manurewa. We got Siwa Wong, another player like Halasima and Wong, very high quality youngsters who have chosen Tonga. Obviously Wong can represent like Fiji, China, New Zealand, and probably Australia if he wanted to, because he did move. The Roosters recruited Siwa Wong from Auckland at a young age while he was still at Mount Albert Grammar. But he's spent a few years of his schooling in Australia playing first 15. And obviously Vaimongi do have a funky De La Salle connection there. Dimitri Vaimonga and Jason Tamalolo both went to De La Salle. Now they're in the same Tongan squad. It will be pretty interesting in the next few years when you see Halasima and Vaimonga playing against the other young Warriors, because sticking to the theme and the trend of international eligibility, Ali Leotawa, Jacob Laban, Tanistell Smith, they're all Samoan Kiwi players who I think will play. They would choose to pursue the New Zealand Kiwis path, but they could also play for Samoa. But you would see Halasima and Vaimonga coming up against Leotawa, Laban, Tanistell Smith, maybe even Iriaramia at some stage in the future as well. So that is something to watch out for. I would love to see that battle. Like Halasima versus Jacob Laban would be crazy, or Vaimonga versus Tanistell Smith. That would be very fun to watch. And I'm also going to have fun watching Xavier Willison playing for the Kiwis. He is a Cook Islands international, and an interesting way to think about this is there's basically been a swap. Willison was aligned with the Cook Islands in the first few years of his NRL journey, and Marata Niukore had returned to the Kiwis mixer in recent years, but now Marata Niukore is back with the Cook Islands and Xavier Willison comes into the Kiwis squad. I think Willison is a better rugby league player right now than Marata Niukore, but they have the same edge middle versatility. Obviously Willison's got more potential, he's got more upside, and maybe there was some politicking going on there from because the coaches for New Zealand and Cook Islands, they would know each other pretty well. So we'll bring in Willison, but we'll make sure that Marata Niukore is available for you. I don't know, but that's just how I read the situation. And Xavier Willison is the only debutant for the Kiwis. Fantastic year for the Broncos, and he comes into the squad as a debutant while I think Griffin Neem's out injured. Not sure what Leo Thompson's up to, and I'm not sure about the situation with Jordan Ricky. I thought Jordan Ricky would be in the squad because he's had a fantastic year with the Broncos, so there may be a bit of a situation there, but whether they're injured or they're just CBF, who knows. Point is, those three young forwards are not in the squad. Griffin Neem, Leo Thompson, Jordan Ricky, all high quality younger forwards, but then you can still bring in Xavier Willison as another young forward, and you've got guys like Nofahu White, Aaron Clark on the rise as players who have debuted for the Kiwis in the last 2 years. I think White was a 2023 debut and Aaron Clark was a debut last year. So very excited to see Xavier Willison play for the Kiwis, and the important thing about his selection is that he does cover edge and middle. So you've got Isaiah Papali'i who can cover edge and middle at an international rugby league level, right? Like that is the important thing here. It's like, yeah, you can cover edge and middle playing for your local Prems team, but can you do it at New South Wales Cup? Can you do it at NRL? Can you do it at international rugby league level where the vibrations are crazy? So I think Papali'i is a very reliable edge, middle, versatile forward. Scott Sorensen, Britton Nikora, they are more just straight up and down edge forwards. But you can have Xavier Willison on your bench to roll through the middle as a big bopper. But then, as we saw for the Broncos this year, he also did a great job plugging holes at edge forward as well. So I'll be very interesting to see how Willison is used, because he does have that ability and that potential. Otherwise, it's just a solid, experienced New Zealand Kiwis squad, and that hasn't been the case for the last few years. So last year there were a lot of injuries, players unavailable, which I do think impacted performances. And 2023 there was a pretty strong Kiwi squad, if I remember. But there were a lot of new players, so that's where you saw that kind of White, Neem, Thompson, Tomoko, those Keanu Kinney. Like all those players have come into the Kiwis setup recently, so they've had to integrate those players after the 2022 World Cup, where you also integrated some players like Sebastian Chris and those type of characters who played at the 2022 World Cup. Once again, I think International Rugby League, you need experience, and you need to be able to integrate younger players, to develop them, to get them in the mix, to give them a taste of what it's going to be like to play against Tonga at Mount Smart Stadium, because that is the craziest environment that many of these players will experience. And if you have a younger squad, regardless of you've got a couple of veterans, but if you have a younger squad, they might not be ready for all of that. So International Rugby League, I always prefer a bit of a skew towards experience and veterans, and I don't view these teams as all-star teams. There's like a pecking order. There is leadership, there is experience, there is seniority, there is you need to show the older players respect. You need to show all players selection respect, or else they'll just go represent another country, like that's just straight up and down how it is. But for the Kiwis right now, I'm actually fascinated by how this Pacific Championships go, because I think they're under a little bit of pressure. Like, there's Stacey Jones needs some wins. I've got no problems with what Stacey Jones has done. Last year, the squad was younger. They were battling injuries. They only lost by 1 point against Tonga, and they were admirable in their efforts against Australia in Christchurch. I've got no problems with what Stacey Jones has done as Kiwis coach, but he needs some wins just to chill everyone else out. There's a lot of kind of angst towards Stacey Jones that is fair. You can feel however you want. What I'm saying is he needs a win just to chill everyone else out. He needs wins against Samoa and Tonga, and a good campaign, regardless of whether they win it or not. He needs to win some games of rugby league and show that he is the best man for this job moving forward. And he's made a few funky selection calls, because we got Asafa Solomona and Dylan Brown in the squad coming after really weird years for those two. Dylan Brown, he's going to be in the halves with Kieran Foran. He's one of our best halves. The best New Zealand Kiwis halves combination is Jerome Hughes from Wellington, Dylan Brown from Whangarei. Hughes is out injured, so you're going to have Foran and Dylan Brown probably in that halves mix. I've got no issues with Dylan Brown being selected, but he did have a weird year with the Eels, because once he signed with the Knights, then the Eels were like, wow, we don't really want you kicking up our funk here. We got something cooking, and you're just going to ruin it. But Dylan Brown stayed solid with the Eels. Like he didn't complain. He didn't do anything like stinky vibes. He just got on with the business. When he was asked to play centre, he played centre. When he was called back to play in the halves, he did his job in the halves. So that was good signs for Dylan Brown and where he is at as a rugby league player. And I think this campaign will rejuvenate Dylan Brown and give him confidence ahead of that move to the Knights. But the best Kiwis footy involves Dylan Brown and Asofa Solomona. Like the best performances we've seen from the Kiwis over the last few years, those two play key roles, big roles, important roles. And Dylan Brown is very important in the halves, and obviously Asofa Solomona, International Rugby League, coming up against a lot of big boppers. He is like, I'm looking at the Kiwis graphic for their squad, and we got Fisher Harris here. He is intimidating. He's a bully, but there's bigger dudes in the NRL. There's bigger dudes in International Rugby League than Fisher Harris, than Joseph Tapine, than Moses Leota. So that's where you need just like a massive big bopper just to settle everyone down. And Asofa Solomona is that, but he's also got a very weird situation. He's gone from the Storm, the season injuries, suspensions. There's all these headlines about the new rugby union competition. And if you could listen in this far in the video, I'll give you a heads up. When you see this kind of discussion, I smell fear. And personally, there's no need for fear, because all the players they're talking about going to the new rugby union competition, a younger dude is just going to come in. Like, have you seen how good young people are at sports? So there is that fear in a lot of the rugby league coverage about the rich money guzzlers in rugby union. All of that fear doesn't take into account that there's always a youngster on the rise who will just make you forget. Like, as soon as you leave NRL, specifically in the context of this R360 competition, as soon as you leave the NRL bubble, who cares about you? You're irrelevant to a lot of people, and there is always a younger player ready to take your spot, because the youngsters are crazy talented in all sports. So I don't have any fear about that, but you are seeing a lot of fear about that. And it would be weird if Asofa Solomona finished his rugby league career, finished with the Kiwis, and then he just leaves, and he doesn't have an NRL team for next year at the moment. So it's a very weird situation, but I'm waffling around my point here that Dylan Brown and Asofa Solomona, they are in the Kiwis squad. They're going to be in the Kiwis camp, and not only will Stacey Jones solidify his status as Kiwis coach with wins or losses, but also how he gets the best out of Asofa Solomona and Dylan Brown after weird seasons, because that tells us about the Kiwis mana. That tells us about the culture in the Kiwis squad. If he can get Asofa Solomona fizzing, dominating Samoa and Tonga, well, that's going to put Asofa Solomona in the shop window. Then everyone else is going to see, like, this guy's serious about rugby league, but also gives us a positive indication about the Kiwis culture and all the intangibles that we want to see, because it should be there. I think it is there, but we need to see it in this Pacific Championship window. One last thing, we always hear players choosing this nation over that nation. The Aussies, they never tell you about the players from Australia who are choosing to play for New Zealand ahead of Australia. And when you're choosing to play for New Zealand ahead of Australia, you're choosing to play for New Zealand ahead of state of origin. Right now, born and raised in Australia, Sebastian Kris, Scott Sorensen, Casey McLean. They are all choosing to play for the Kiwis over any state of origin. Obviously, Sorensen's got the whānau connection with the illustrious Sorensen whānau and New Zealand Rugby League, so that's good. Before playing for the Kiwis last year, Casey McLean was playing under 19s for New South Wales. Sebastian Kris, he's a proud Indigenous man from Australia who's also must have links to Aotearoa. He's not chasing any Australian stuff, you know. He played the 2022 World Cup. Now he's in this Kiwis squad. He is now a loyal servant to Aotearoa Kiwis. I don't care where you're born. That is one of the most overrated things when discussing people in sports. Where are you born? Yes, it does help you get a visa. Yes, it does help you get a passport. Whatever it is, like there are logistical benefits to where you are born. But you could, like, there's how many players, you know, born in Samoa, raised in New Zealand, grow up in Australia. Like, it's not important to us when we're trying to dissect these matters. I say that to say Phoenix Crossland, born in New Zealand, grew up all his life in Australia. He also played age group footy for New South Wales, so I consider him an Australian. Yes, his whole family there might be from New Zealand. He was born in New Zealand. Phoenix Crossland has spent the majority of his life in Australia, but he wasn't born there, so Casey McLean, Scott Sorensen, Sebastian Kris, all born and raised in Australia, choosing to play for the Kiwis. Phoenix Crossland was at least born in New Zealand, but I put him in the Australian bucket as well. So you got two players right there who have played age grade footy for New South Wales, Casey McLean, Phoenix Crossland. Now they're playing for the Kiwis, but you never hear the Australians talk about players choosing New Zealand Kiwis over state of origin. Anytime that is brought up, it's the other way. You know, it's Kyle Weeks choosing the state of origin path over Kiwis, and that's all fair, but the Kiwis and Kiwi Ferns squads, they are getting a growing number of players who have grown up in Australia for most of their lives, or they're born and raised in Australia. So, I mean, the fact that you've got, I'm going to say 4 Australians in this Kiwi squad, that does tell us something about the culture and the mana of the Kiwis to set it up. And from there, we'll keep learning about Stacey Jones, we'll keep learning about International Rugby League, and we'll keep learning about being our best self. So big up to you. Let us know your thoughts on New Zealand, Cook Islands, Samoa and Tonga, and we'll keep track of this. We'll try and do a Kiwi Ferns video, Women's Pacific Championship video over the next few days as well, so stay tuned for that. Big up yourself, do your best. Cowabunga.